You're just sitting on the couch, scrolling through your phone, when out of nowhere, a random memory hits you. No warning. The smell of cracking open a brand new Nintendo 64 cartridge. The sharp, almost painful screech of a dial-up modem connecting. You remember being outside all day with your friends, staying out until the streetlights flicked on, and knowing that was your signal to go home. And in that moment, something in your chest tightens a little. Not really sadness, just something you can't quite name. Most people call this nostalgia and leave it at that. Like it's just a soft, harmless feeling that shows up when an old song starts playing. Something simple, something light. But the truth is, when people who grew up in the 90s talk about their childhood, it's not just warm memories. It feels closer to loss, like you're missing something that's actually gone for good. And if we're being honest, most people around you don't take that seriously. They'll say you're just romanticizing the past, that every generation thinks their childhood was the best, that things weren't actually that great back then. And sure, part of that might be true, but it doesn't explain everything, because psychology tells a very different story about why so many Americans who grew up in the 90s feel this deep, almost aching connection to that time. This isn't random. It's not just sentiment. There's something real happening inside your brain when those memories come back, and it goes way deeper than just liking old cartoons. If you grew up in America during the 90s, you probably know exactly what this feels like. Maybe you still quote lines from Home Alone. Maybe you can still feel the exact weight of a Game Boy in your hands. Maybe the Rugrats theme song just starts playing in your head for no reason at all. If any of that hits a little too close, stay with me. Because what's really going on here reveals more about you and your brain than you think. So today, we're breaking down the psychology behind 90s nostalgia. Why it hits so hard. What it's actually doing inside your brain. And what it shows about how people form identity, belonging, and deal with change. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Your brain doesn't store memories like a camera recording video. It stores the feelings tied to those moments, and the memories that stick the most are the ones loaded with emotion, sensory detail, and repetition. Think about it. You didn't just watch Saturday morning cartoons once. You watched Pokemon, Hey Arnold, and the Powerpuff Girls every single week in the same spot, probably eating the same snacks. Your brain was basically soaking in those moments over and over again. That kind of repeated emotional exposure builds extremely strong neural pathways. So when something triggers even a small piece of that memory, a song, a smell, a logo, your brain reacts like it's happening all over again. That's not weakness. That's just how human memory works. There's even a psychological concept called the reminiscence bump, the well-documented pattern that people remember events from their teenage years and early adulthood much more vividly than anything from other periods of life. Researchers believe this happens because that window, roughly between ages 10 and 25, is when your identity is forming the fastest. You're figuring out who you are, what you're drawn to, and what you believe in. Everything feels deeply important because from a neurological standpoint, it actually is. Your brain is being shaped by those experiences in real time. So the first time you heard Nirvana, or stayed up too late watching Titanic at a sleepover, or finally beat a level in Ocarina of Time, those weren't just fun moments. They were moments that helped build who you are. But that's only one piece of it. The reminiscence bump explains why those early memories feel so vivid, but it doesn't fully explain why nostalgia for the 90s, specifically, feels so heavy, even a little bittersweet for so many people. To understand that, you have to go deeper. The 90s in America hold a very specific place culturally. It was the last decade of what many people call an analog childhood. Kids had technology. You had Nintendo 64, the Game Boy, and VHS tapes from Blockbuster, but it didn't take over your life. You still rode your bike around the neighborhood. You still played kickball in the street. You still walked up to your friend's house and knocked on the door to ask if they could come outside. There was a natural rhythm to childhood that smartphones and social media later completely broke apart. And this is where it starts to matter. When you look back at the 90s now, you're not just remembering fun moments. You're remembering a time when life had friction in the best way possible. You had to wait for Saturday morning cartoons because you couldn't stream them whenever you wanted. You listened to an entire Backstreet Boys cassette because skipping to a specific track in seconds wasn't an option. You rented a movie from Blockbuster and committed to watching it. That friction created anticipation. And psychologically, anticipation is one of the strongest sources of real pleasure. Let's be honest for a second. For a lot of people, this nostalgia isn't just about cartoons or video games. It's about something harder to explain. It's about a time before the pressure showed up, before constant comparison became normal, before that feeling that you always need to do more, be more, achieve more. A lot of kids from the 90s grew up and stepped straight into a culture built around hustle, productivity, and performing your life online. And sometimes, that nostalgia is actually exhaustion wearing a different face. It's your brain trying to return to a version of life that felt manageable. That felt real. But there's something important to notice here. The fact that you feel this so strongly actually says something genuinely positive about you. People who experience deep nostalgia tend to be emotionally aware, strongly connected to others, and especially good at finding meaning in small, everyday moments. You don't need something big or impressive to feel something real. A song from 1997, a certain kind of afternoon light, the sound of a specific video game. That's enough for you. That's not insignificant. That's a strength. Social media makes it seem like everyone is constantly living their best life, always glowing, always grinding, always okay. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're thinking about a Saturday morning when you were 10 years old. No phone, no notifications, just cartoons and cereal, and wondering why that felt so much easier than now. American culture doesn't really give you space to slow down. It doesn't reward a quiet life. But for a lot of people, childhood in the 90s was quiet, and your nervous system still remembers that. Picture this. It's a Friday night sometime in the mid-90s. You're at a friend's house. Their mom drove you to Blockbuster, and you spent 20 minutes going back and forth between two movies. In the end, you rented Jurassic Park again because it never got old. You went back, made microwave popcorn, sat on the floor in front of the TV, and didn't think about anything else for 2 hours. No one needed to record it. No one posted about it. It just happened. And it was enough. But sometimes, nostalgia takes a darker turn. Sometimes it's not just warmth. It becomes avoidance. Sometimes people go back to childhood memories because the present feels too heavy to deal with. If you notice yourself living more in the past than in the present, if nostalgia feels less like comfort and more like escape, it might be worth asking what you're carrying right now that feels too difficult to face. That's not judgment. It's just an honest question. So here's the real question. When those memories from the 90s come back, does it feel like a warm visit? Or does it feel like you're trying to go back and stay there? There's a real difference between honoring your past and hiding inside it. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're not weird for feeling this. Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do, holding on to the moments that shaped who you became. The 90s didn't just happen. They formed an entire generation, and now that same generation is trying to live in a world that barely looks like the one it grew up in. Of course it stings sometimes. What's interesting is that the people who feel this the strongest are usually the ones who were the most present back then. The ones who actually lived it. The ones who stayed outside until it got dark, who cared way too much about their Pokemon cards, who cried at the end of Toy Story and didn't try to hide it. You felt everything back then, and you still feel everything now. Psychologists sometimes call this restorative nostalgia, a pull not just to remember the past, but to somehow return to it or recreate how it felt. And study after study shows that when this doesn't turn into avoidance, it actually increases your sense of connection, meaning, and overall well-being. In the right amount, it's not a weakness, it's something that helps you. So here's something I want you to think about. What's the one memory from the 90s that hits you the hardest every time it comes back? Drop it in the comments. I have a feeling the answers are going to be extremely specific and instantly relatable. If you like understanding the hidden psychology behind everyday experiences, the things you feel but can't fully explain, hit subscribe. That's exactly what this channel is here for. And in the next video, we're going to break down something that affects far more people than you'd expect. The psychology of people who grew up as the responsible one in their family, and what that quietly does to them for the rest of their life. Chances are, you already know exactly who I'm talking about.